everybody. Welcome to a new podcast. It's episode 1, Oppo on 3-0. It's going to be a good one. We've got 3 of us here, 3 San Diego natives. My name is Andy Bishop, and I've got a couple of my compadres here, Brian Vilvin and Lacey Yonke, joining me. Brian, we've known each other for a few years. You ready to talk some Padres shop?
Yeah, can't wait, man. It's there's nothing I like more than talking about the Pods. So happy to do it, and thanks for getting this together. It should be a lot of fun, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the third component of this podcast, Lacey Yonke, she's joining us not from San Diego, but she's definitely from here. What's going on, Lacey?
What's up, guys? Thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited about this opportunity. Grew up in San Diego, going to college up at Santa Clara now, but I'll be back in San Diego pretty soon. So excited to talk Padres right before the season starts.
Yeah, well, we're going Oppo on 3-0. That's kind of the philosophy here. You know, if you're a Padres fan, you'll remember August 17th, 2020, where Fernando Tatis swung at a 92-mile-per-hour fastball on a 3-0 count, took it to right field, the start of Slam Diego, the first of 4 straight grand slams in 4 games to set a record. So that inspired us. All of us, like I said, are San Diego natives. I've lived in San Diego probably for about 2/3 of my life, I would say. Born and raised here originally, hardcore Padres fans. I lived up in Northern California and saw the worst of Giants fans. Now back here in San Diego, it's the Dodgers fans, especially with the success that team has had. So finally, we got a team in front of us that is definitely playoff caliber and possibly World Series bound one of these years. So we're really excited. Brian, you know, you and I have known each other for, it's got to be a decade now. Brian gave me my first opportunity in sports media, so I'm eternally in debt to him. He you know, Brian, you interviewed me at the Hall of Champions, which, you know, is no longer there, but the San Diego Hall of Fames in Petco Park, man. It's good to be talking with you, and you know, I appreciate your love for this city.
Yeah, I can't believe someone actually put me in charge of hiring individuals to work in sports media. I don't know why they thought that was a good idea, but yeah, I've been super blessed to work in this field for my entire adult life. And yeah, I've gotten an opportunity to meet some really cool people and a lot of like-minded individuals. And, you know, it just always keeps coming back to, we have some of the best conversations. And when you talk to people who are passionate about something and also understand what they're talking about, it just makes for great conversation. And that's one of the things I'm most excited about here, is to get together with a couple of people that are just as passionate about Padres baseball as I am, at a time unlike any other in Padres history. And, you know, what we've got in front of us is really unprecedented for all of us in San Diego, and people who have been following this team so closely for so long. And it's just a perfect time to bring this thing together.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So, you know, Brian and I, we bring the experience to this podcast. You know, I like to think of the 3 of us, if you're going to relate us to Padres pitchers, Brian and I are kind of like your Craig Stammen and Mark Melancon. And Lacey, a little bit younger than us, probably more of a Mackenzie Gore. Lacey, tell us a little bit about your background in baseball and growing up in San Diego.
Yeah, Mackenzie Gore, love that. My background in baseball sort of falls long back. I grew up playing baseball in Bay Park, an area of San Diego, and I played for roughly, 12 seasons. I played baseball with the boys and traveled pretty much all over San Diego, playing in different parts, you know, North County, down in Chula Vista, out in Ramona, Escondido, La Jolla, Pacific Beach, North City. Played all over San Diego with the boys, traveling to different, you know, parks, and played Little League, Pony League all the way through till 8th grade. And then I switched over to travel ball and played all the way through with the boys. And that sort of devolved into a path where I started running track and field. So I run track and field currently with my university, but baseball has always just been, sort of home base for me. And I found a career in sports writing that I hope to pursue after graduation. And I currently write for a small sports writing site called Last Word on Sports. And I cover the San Diego Padres right now, heading into arguably, like you guys have said, the most exciting season that we have ever had. Started covering the Pods back in August, around about a week before Tatis hit that grand slam. So been covering them for about 6-7 months now, and really excited to keep covering them all season long. And I've been going to, Petco Park ever since I was 4 or 5 years old. Have such fond memories going there, hanging out downtown with my family. So Padres and just Major League Baseball has just been a huge part of my life, and can't wait to talk about it more with you guys.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Kind of the basis of this podcast, right, is Fernando Tatis and that decision and that moxie that he brings. And that resulted in the huge 14-year, $340 million contract that he got this offseason. So that's a little bit of the backdrop about today's conversation is the relevance of that commitment between a player and an organization that's definitely never happened here in the city of San Diego. Before we kind of talk about that, I do want to get your guys' opinion, a little flashback about those Slam Diego days, 4 home runs against the Texas Rangers. Which one of those stands out to you the most, Brian? I know that there's a couple of different ways you could go, but of all of those, what comes to your mind?
I see. The thing I don't want to do is I don't want to go through all of them and talk about what was awesome about all of them, because then I'm taking it all away from you guys. So I'm going to go with Manny Machado's, because that game, I remember it distinctly. That was one of the first games that went to extra innings where the other team scored first, and then we had to come back. And at that point, we finished the season with 37 wins, and it was like this great success. But at that point, it was kind of like a make or break time for the Pods. And when the Rangers scored in the top of the 10th, the Pods came up. We still hadn't scored yet. We had the bases loaded, but there was, I believe, 1 out, and Manny Machado hits into a lot of double plays. Nothing against the guy. That's just a reality. And, we were 1 pitch away from potentially rolling into a game-ending double play, and we lose that game. And instead, he sends one off of the second deck out in left field, and that ball was just completely pummeled. And I remember just freaking out, losing my mind. And at that point, I wasn't even thinking about the fact that it was 3 straight games with a grand slam. That obviously settles in a little bit after, but it was like, oh my gosh, we won. This was such a huge game. We needed that. Like, I was hoping maybe a sac fly or something and someone gets a base hit, but he just completely annihilated that ball. And I will forever remember that moment. So number 3 was the most memorable for me.
What about you, Lacey?
Other than obviously Tatis starting it off, I mean, hitting that one on 3-0 obviously sparked up so much controversy. I remember sitting in my living room trying to explain to my female teammates, about why swinging on 3-0 was sort of breaking this unwritten rule in baseball. And we didn't really get it. No one really understood what that meant, especially not having played baseball before. But other than that first one, I'd like to say Will Myers. I think he was number 2, and I think that was in the first inning. We were down 3-0, and I think Will Myers just having one heck of a season last year, and I've seen a lot of the same, his same approach and plate appearances and hitting strategies sort of translate over into spring training, which is exciting. But I think the fact that he came back after having such a rough 2019, having kind of a rough, go in the last couple years, and then seeing him get up to the plate and smash that second grand slam, that sort of started, obviously Tatis started it, but Will Myers kind of lit the fire to have it keep going. And without that second one, we wouldn't have had a third or a fourth. So I loved Will Myers. I love his his plate appearances every single time. I love his kind of old school nature of play. No batting gloves, just kind of gets up there and rips one. First inning, I think that was probably my favorite, other than obviously Tatis starting it off.
Yeah, that was my favorite looking one because I love Will Myers' home run pose. Like I could just use one of those every game. But I know kind of this one's the easy one, but I'm going to go with the fourth one in Hosmer, and here's why. It's because anytime the Padres have a chance to make history, they rarely do. But that game, I was like, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. So when I was watching it live, I mean, it happened exactly what I wanted to. And the pitch that he hit was pretty incredible because it was like, I remember it was a 94 mile per hour fastball that was not just on the inside corner, but even a couple more inches inside. So he had to anticipate that and, obviously get out in front of it and extend. And then he's got the little butterfly arm action going and it clears the fence by 3 feet, And so finally something happened, like the Padres, right? They're the team that, it took almost 50 years to have a player go for the cycle. We still haven't had a pitcher pitch a perfect game or a no hitter. So for us to finally come through, that definitely made it for me.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I also liked. When I say I loved Don Orsillo's call. And that was part of the thing that really got Slam Diego going was him saying welcome to Slam Diego. It was just, It was such a perfect moment and it didn't seem contrived. It just felt like exactly what it was supposed to be. It felt really natural. So it ended with a really cool call like that. And it started with Tatis decapitating that cardboard cutout. And that could only happen during COVID season, that there's cardboard cutouts out there. And the one he hit it, the ball was going so fast that it just completely destroyed and it hit him right in the perfect spot. That cardboard cutout stood no chance. So it started off really cool and it ended really cool. And then to have 2 games later, so the 5th and 6th games with Jake Cronenworth hitting another one, that was totally crazy. And that one doesn't get as much love. He's if the 4 guys are on the front of the shirt, he's on the back with his little, I'm number 5, everybody. But yeah, what a cool moment. That was so much fun.
And I can only imagine what it would have been like if there would have been, fans in the stands. That would have been, Petco would have been going off. It would have been electric just to be in that stadium. So maybe something, we've seen a couple Grand Slams this spring training. So, maybe something is brewing this 2021 season, maybe some fans in the stands then.
Yeah, if fans come in the stands, like you said, can you imagine the buzz when they do get the bases loaded? Anytime. A lot of times during games, there's these lulls where nothing really happens for a few innings. Every single time the Padres even have a chance to get the bases loaded, now it's going to be get out of the beer line.
Yeah.
Don't go to the bathroom right now. You have to stay. I mean, our at-bats are going to be like that anyway. Can't miss. Hell, even when we're on defense, this team, you're not going to want to go leave your seat during the course of a game. Petco, I just can't imagine what it's going to be like. Yeah. Oh, can't wait.
So excited.
It's going to be pretty fun. I have a colleague at work. I believe he said this year, I think throughout the entire stadium, obviously with limited capacity, that everything is going to be service-based. So you aren't going to have to go up and get your food. You're just going to have somebody there to order for you. And so you won't be missing anything. For sure. All right, guys, let's talk about this a little bit, about this plan that the organization has constructed. I know there's a lot of things right now that we could talk about spring training wise, but I think it's important, especially kind of for our first episode, to take a step back and, so much has gone into this. A couple of the big signings, that's when I think, people's eyes opened up a little bit, signing Hosmer and Machado to those 2 big deals back-to-back years. Obviously, the marketability of the team has gone up. For you, Brian, I mean, this plan put together by Preller and Seidlers and plenty of others, it has come to fruition. But these guys, they thought about this a lot, and this obviously wasn't just 1 year in the making. This was thought over several years with their farm system and everything considered. How do you see it?
It has it's completely surpassed anything I could have imagined. They've played it out perfectly, like exactly what the optimists were saying is happening has happened. And I was one of those optimists just because, I'm like the biggest Padre homer of all time. I can still look at things analytically and in reality, but I also I want to give Padres ownership and management the benefit of the doubt and players the benefit of the doubt, because that's my team and that's who I root for. I basically have like blind faith as it comes to the Pods. But for them to pull off what they've pulled off, and especially after what happened in 2015, and everybody seeing that as like the benchmark, like, oh, they tried this before and it didn't work, like it was a big failure, to be able to get out past that and to not look back, and for ownership to continue to trust in AJ Preller and let him see this thing through. I think that's been the biggest part, is that they had their plan and they didn't listen to all the outside factors that were saying like, oh, they already tried this, it doesn't work, it doesn't, like the Padres can never get it right. And they've bucked every trend imaginable. Like when we signed Will Myers to the first deal of this whole bunch, it was like, oh, well, this is exciting that they gave money to a player, but why'd they give it to Will Myers? And, that's the only player they're going to be able to sign, because that's been the history of this franchise, is you can only have one big contract and then you're going to trade him anyway. So what's the point, and why would it be him? And then the next year you get Hosmer, and it's like, oh, well, now you can't get anybody else. The following year you get Machado, and it's like, oh my gosh, well, what happened here? They'll never get anybody else. And then you sign, and every single year people keep doubting and saying like, oh, they can never this, never that. And they've just done everything that they want to do. They go out and make all these trades over this winter when nobody was doing anything. They go get Blake Snell, Darvish. Why not just go get everybody? That's the way they looked at it. And they just don't listen to outside factors. And I just love that about them. They're not worried about what people are saying out there, and they're just sticking to a plan that they've had for all these years, and it's working out unbelievably well. The way I dreamed it up 4 years ago, I still can't even imagine that we're actually here and it worked.
Yeah, it's a great thing to see. So as I mentioned, Brian and I have maybe a little older than Lacey, seen a few more losing seasons amongst our pods. Lacey, what year were you born?
She's seen a lot, man. Don't worry.
I was born in 1998. That first, World Series loss.
I was born in 1984. So there we go. Look at that.
I wasn't born in an important year.
We were both born of World Series years. So
yeah,
that's pretty sweet.
All right, Lacey. So be thankful that you don't have any early memories of Padres teams from 99 to about 2004. I was living up in Northern California during those years when Barry Bonds, Rich Aurelia, and the rest of the Giants were mashing on the Padres, and I had to deal with those fans. But as a slightly more youthful person on this podcast, and you've obviously seen a lot of tough seasons for the Padres, how do you view what this organization has done the last couple of years?
Yeah, as you said, obviously my sort of data kind of goes back to just within the last 8 years or so. I really started only really paying attention once I kind of got more into sports writing, which was probably my freshman year of college. So 2016, around then, when we were not having a great year, and then obviously we signed Hosmer 2018, get Machado 2019. But I think sort of kind of what Brian was saying, there seems to be so much cohesion between the ownership with Seidler, with Preller, all the way down to Tingler. It seems like this rebuild, especially roughly in the last 4 years, even from just becoming a better team, has just completely changed the whole Padres, the whole aura of the Padres, it seems, and the city of San Diego. Like, just being able to look, if you look at the numbers, even if you look at some of the other metrics, batting average, on-base percentage, runs per game, strikeout percentages, all those numbers have improved so much in the last 4 or 5 years that it's not only just, oh, we're going to go out and get all these, players in the off season. Oh, we're going to try and sign these big names to, sort of improve our name, prove to, the world of baseball that the Padres mean business. It's also improving those mechanical issues, improving the offense, turning into, an offense that sort of has an identity now. The Padres didn't really have an identity before the last couple of years. So to have the ownership sort of, take initiative, but then also have the managers and the coaching staff and the pitching coaches, hitting coaches all sort of get on board is really cool to see, especially, in the last 4 years that I've really been paying attention as well.
Yeah, I'm glad to see the success, especially for AJ Preller. He's been our GM for several years. He tried to make the big splash in 2015. People were calling him the rock star GM, right? And obviously that plan didn't come to fruition. And, some people were talking, maybe even people in the media that, so like 2 years ago that, if Preller doesn't come up with something big, if these signings of Hosmer, Machado, XYZ don't, help this team and make it a playoff contender, then, he may be out the door. But obviously that has not been the case. And we've had a successful team here. Brian, what do you make of the hire of Jace Tingler? Let's go back and talk about that. I know we're going to talk a lot more next week about the decisions Tingler has to make, but I went back and we had an episode about this, Brian, and we were making jokes about whether the Padres should hire this guy or not, or some other seasoned head coach or manager, and they end up hiring this guy. Kind of cool that, Preller brings in one of his guys.
Yeah, I mean, it again just went against all conventional wisdom. Like, they went with the guy that they knew they wanted. And like Lacey was saying, their entire approach at the plate has been different. Just the type of player they're bringing in, like they really don't care what outside people say. And we're like, oh, we want Ron Washington or Dusty Bear, whoever we think we want, Joe Madden. Like, they had their person in mind. Apparently Preller's wanted this guy forever, and he just went and got him. And they're sticking to the plan. And that's something that's really hard to do. They have done it. And that's, to me, Jace Tingler is like the epitome of them not listening to what people on the outside are saying, them just doing what they think they should do because they know, they've had their plan, they're sticking to it. And Jace Tingler epitomizes that. It's pretty awesome. What about you, Andy?
Yeah, no.
We know you got a little Jace Tingler. That's your guy, man.
I'm trying to save up my Jace Tingler.
He may have a surprise for us.
Yeah.
Andy might have a little surprise on the Jace Tingler podcast episode next time. So maybe we should skip this one for right now, Andy, and let you dive into that one next week.
Yeah, no, we'll talk plenty of Jace next week. But one thing I'll add, and we've touched on it a little bit, is just the depth of the farm system. And we've had this so many times throughout the years, the last decade, and, nothing really happened when we, bring these guys up. It's not like multiple guys would become superstars. And that's not necessarily the case that happened here, but you had such depth there that you were able to utilize, some of these players in multiple trades to bring these, big name pitchers or whatever it may be. So for that to actually result in a positive as opposed to something that's not really relevant was pretty cool for me to see this time around.
So we're in the doldrums of spring training right now. Everybody's starting to get a little bit worn out and anxious for the season to come, except for one guy, the guy who this podcast is kind of named after, and that's Fernando Tatis Jr. He was out for a few days with some sickness and some ailments, and then he came back very strong in a really big way. Lacey, did you get a chance to see anything that Fernando Tatis Jr. has done over the last handful of days in spring training? Some stuff that's kind of caught the sports world by storm.
No, I didn't hear about it. No, I got a chance to watch some of those highlights, and man, it just reminds me, brings it back to this whole sentiment of how exciting this team is going to be, and how exciting him as a player is going to really impact the culture of this team, and how many, people sort of tune in to the San Diego Padres this year. I mean, you had his highlights sort of circulating all across social media, all across MLB, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. His highlights just sort of are everywhere. So you can't really miss him. But yeah, after watching some of those games back a couple of days ago, really, really exciting stuff.
Yeah, as much as we're calling this thing Oppo on 3-0, it could be called a sac fly to second base or anything. Home run on your first swing back.
Yeah.
Yeah, this guy, he does it all. Andy, what's your favorite thing that he did this week? Is that leadoff home run? Is it again tagging up and scoring? Just that whole trip around the bases was insane. Like, this guy does it all.
Yeah, I got to go with tagging up when on a pop fly just outside of the infield. He did it 2 years ago. You probably remember that play. That's just like a total, just like stick it to the other team move. Total Oppo on 3-0 move. Like the guy, if he would have the infielder, if he would have played it like an outfielder and, kind of gotten in front of it so he could throw it to the plate, he would have been fine. But, when you're 10 feet outside of the infield, you aren't expecting the guy to tag up. If you aren't aware that it's Fernando Tatis, then you're in trouble. So I just love that. And I saw an article earlier this week and it said that the Padres have no plans to slow Tatis down. And I love seeing that because it's the temptation of an organization when you have a guy, there's injury concern, whatever, because he's playing too hard, he's hustling too hard. That's the philosophy that the organization is going to have. You got to love it.
Yeah, I guess the thing, so as a fielder, as an infielder, you have to be aware that he is the guy running the bases. Like even before that, I believe it was Profar who grounded out when Tatis was on first base. And it was a ground ball to second base, and Tatis rounded and went to third because there was no one covering the bag. They had been in a shift. And so he goes first to third on a ground ball to second base, unheard of, and then pops up on a ball caught by the infielder, backing into the outfield. That's also going to cause all kinds of havoc for teams because they have to think about that. And they're like, oh my gosh, Tatis is the one here. Like, I can't just really backpedal on this. I got to like turn and run. Like there's a chance that a guy misplays that ball now because he's trying to treat it like an outfielder, but he's running backwards. Like there's just all kinds of little tentacles that spread because somebody's doing that. And most of the time as a coach, you'd probably want to tell a guy, don't do that. Like don't tag up in that situation. But 2 years ago, he did it twice, like you were saying, Andy. And both times the umpire called him out. Probably because he thought, no one can do that. Like, that's impossible. And both times replay overturned it and he was safe. So he's now done it 3 times on fly balls caught by infielders. And I just love the approach by the Padres. Just like, hey, this is the guy. Like, this is the reason we signed this guy. This is why he's setting the benchmark for what the future of this game is. And I also just love seeing how up in arms all these Dodger fans get by all the attention that he's getting. And just, people all across the sports world, this guy is taking over internationally. We've talked about the diversity of this Padres squad. And, I saw MLB Japan had tweeted out the Tatis highlight and it had, a couple thousand retweets and all this stuff written in Japanese people. And then I'm, hitting the translate tweet. What did this person say? Translate tweet. And everyone in Japan's going crazy for this guy. Like, it's such a unique opportunity we've got here. And I can't believe he's ours. Like it still feels like we're in the middle of a dream and we haven't won anything yet. Like we're just at the beginning of this thing. And a lot of times when you're at the beginning of something special, you don't realize that you are, but it's so clear that we are at the beginning of really what promises to be a magical run. And it's cool to be living through that and know that you're living through history right now. So in a positive way, because we're kind of living through that with the pandemic too, you're living through a piece of history that 100 years from now, people are going to be talking about, but this one's in a positive light, which is what we're all about here. So pretty fired up, if you couldn't tell.
I mean, and speaking of history, did you guys see that stat that in that game versus the A's, after his first day back after the flu, he launches that 3-2 pitch, 450 feet, first at bat back. And it was against Sergio Romo, who back in 2008 he gave up his first home run ever to Tatis's dad. So that stat to me, like that's where it really
so
comes
cool.
full circle to me. Yeah, back in 2008, Tatis Sr. launched one off of Sergio Romo. So it's kind of crazy that really does, come full circle. And it's just, of course, Tatis launches that one on that full count, but it really does go to show, back to your point, Brian, how special this team is going to be, how special Tatis really makes this entire franchise come alive, especially moving forward. And yeah, for the next, 14 years, he's going to be taking these risks, tagging up on infield flies, rounding third on ground balls to second. Like that really just doesn't, nothing can make me happier than seeing a guy that's taken all these risks on the field be in, brown and gold for the next 14 years. So it's just going to be really exciting to watch moving forward.
Andy, when you think about this team, we were talking about this a couple years ago with Paddock and with Tatis. Like, are they going to make the roster? Are the Padres going to do the thing that everybody does, which is the roster manipulation and wait for 2 weeks to bring them up so you get an extra year of service time? And they bucked conventional wisdom again, like they do in every case, and started Paddock and Tatis on the opening day roster. That kind of sets the tone for everything, like this team is all about winning. And if you're the best option, you're going to be in there. And it doesn't matter what, conventional wisdom says. That's got to be, it already starts to show in the Mackenzie Gores and the CJ Abramses of the world. Like those guys, they may not start on the roster, but they could. And it's only going to be dependent on whether or not they're the best option. That's got to be something that reverberates through the entire clubhouse. Is that something that you're noticing this spring, Andy?
Yeah, absolutely, man. And, like CJ Abrams is having a pretty solid spring training. And we'd say it's, one of the better ones, except we saw what Tatis did 2 years ago, and it was so cool to see. I remember that first year for Tatis, just how much it was the players as well that wanted to get him on the opening day roster, Machado and Hosmer, especially, two veterans, guys that have been on playoff teams. So that was really cool to see as well. So man,
and don't forget about Ian Kinsler.
Yeah,
he went to bat for Tatis. If that's the only thing Ian Kinsler does for the Padres, like in a positive, I'll take it. But that guy, he's special.
And another full circle thing, I think Ian Kinsler played with Jace Tingler back when they were
really
minor leagues. Yeah. So and Tingler played with Albert Pujols too. So
wow.
Yeah, I kind of crazy that all these things are sort of connected here.
Yeah, these guys are surrounding themselves with the people that they want to be around, and so far they're pushing all the right buttons. So keep doing it, man. I'm with it. Whatever they want to do, sign me up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Fernando Tatis, he's ours for 14 more years. You can't take him away from us.
Nope.
All right, my friends, Andy Bishop and Lacey Yonke, Brian Vilvan here on the Oppo on 3-0 podcast. Let's finish this thing up. I promise we're not just going to drool over Fernando Tatis every episode, but we did to start. But let's at least talk about this team a little bit, about some, personnel or decision-making. Here we are a few weeks into spring training, a couple weeks until opening day on April 1st. I want you guys to give me, the thing that has stuck out to you the most so far in spring training, whether it's a storyline or just something you're still waiting to see happen before spring training. I'll start with you, Lacey. What does the expert have to say on this one?
There's a few storylines that come to mind, but I think the one that excites me the most right now is how well Jake Cronenworth is playing. I kind of expected that, just coming off his, 2020 season, but I think there was a little bit of competition with Ha-Sung Kim sort of getting that roster spot, and there's going to be a little bit of a competition kind of all season long about who gets that second base sort of utility guy role. But Jake Cronenworth is having one heck of a spring, and it fires me up to think that while, Ha-Sung Kim is kind of struggling a little bit at the plate, it seems, as he's adjusting a bit back into, spring training play and into the majors for his first time, I think there's going to be that storyline of Kim Cronenworth back and forth is going to be pretty cool to watch. But the fact that Cronenworth is playing so well right now, it's kind of coming together for him all at the right time. That storyline to me is really cool to watch. And I just love, his style of play, sort of that small ball energy, which is something that really just resonates with me. So I think Cronenworth, Jake, take the cake. I think that's what they say, or some type of storyline there. I don't know, but I love him. I think that storyline is going to be something to watch all 2021 season long.
I think for me, it's been the depth of the roster. And as we looked at the roster, it looks really deep on paper. But then the question marks come in on if there's no DH, then how are you going to find at bats for all of these players? Where is Profar going to play? Where is Kim going to play? Or if he's playing, then where's Cronenworth getting in? And if there's no DH spot, that takes away at bats from those guys. But then you see things like Trent Grisham going down with a bit of an injury. We don't know how severe that's going to be, but you have options and guys who can go, and you put a Jurickson Profar in center. You've still got Tommy Pham in left. You're really not dropping off a ton. Of course we want Trent Grisham in there, but in years past, if a Trent Grisham went down, your team is totally in shambles at that point. And right now it's not. It's okay, well, now, Mateo's going to get a chance to play some other positions. You got O'Grady trying to make this roster and be that other guy. So the depth is really starting to show itself. Of course, you don't want injuries in spring training, but you're going to have injuries over the course of 162 games. And I think this team, more so than any Padre team we've ever had, is completely built for that stretch and to plug in, we've joked about in the past too, we have shortstops all over the field. So, that's a luxury we've never had before, and we're getting to see a lot of that here in the spring, and probably a little earlier than we had hoped.
Yeah, definitely some tough decisions for Tingler and the rest of the staff to make heading into the season in terms of who will be on the roster. Okay, so I'm going to go a little Debbie Downer here. Sorry, guys. My storyline and my question mark still is Dinelson Lamet. We still don't know what we're going to see from him, right? He's kind of been on this trajectory, and the organization has voiced that, they feel confident with it. And I think, we're going to start seeing him in, some live action, in a couple weeks before the season. But, this is a guy who was clearly our most dominant pitcher last year. There was uncertainty with, I think it was a biceps injury, right? That going into the playoffs. And then there was still some uncertainty in the offseason. Did he need any kind of surgery? They held off. They said they were going to rest it. Things are going to be okay. And, 2 weeks before the season, I'm still not sure where he's at. And it's more of a thing I just want to know. I wish, we needed to know that he needed major surgery back in the offseason. I just don't want this to be, Mike Clevenger where, he finally tries to pitch in a professional regular season game. And then we find out that he needs major surgery and we lose him for the year. That's the thing I don't want. I just wish I had a little more certainty with him going into the season. Sorry to be a downer here, Brian.
You wish the Magic 8 Ball would give you a little more info.
Yeah.
I agree, and I'm concerned. I've been concerned about what his status was going to be since he walked off the mound, at the end of last season. But I also think if they are looking at it like we're only going to get a handful of months out of this guy, or he's not quite ready yet, of course we want Dinelson Lamet in July, August, September, October, rather than March, April, May, June, and then we lose him. So if they think that, he's going to be working on limited bullets this year, and we have the depth that we've never had on the pitching staff as well, then, slow play it as much as you can and see if you can't get, 80 innings out of him maybe. If that's the max, then bring him in midway through the year. It's like going out and getting a Cy Young caliber pitcher at the trading deadline, except you don't have to trade anybody for him. He's just been working out on the side. So I think at this point, I'll be surprised if he doesn't pitch this year. And I do like the approach they're taking with him. If he doesn't, though, I'll be real sad. Snake bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, he may not be ready to go right off the bat, but that lends opportunity to our trio of young lefties in Adrian Morahone, Ryan Weathers, and Mackenzie Gore. So it'll be good to see them. I mean, if Lamet doesn't start, you pencil one of those in as a number 5 guy. And then, there's been a lot of talk that we could use a 6-man rotation. So that's still an exciting part of that potential dilemma, Lacey.
I agree. And I think, as Brian said, it seems like the overall sentiment is to sort of be patient with Lamet and see, try and see him later on in the season, in the fall, August, October, September, when we'll need him the most. But as, I've thought about this before, we are going to need, that core rotation to improve if we're going to contend with NL West Dodgers, because we need that pitching to really come through. And Lamet could be, a key contender for us to really compete with the Dodgers on a, pretty even playing field. So if we look at, that starting rotation, which we'll probably talk about, in the coming weeks, comparing those two rotations, Lamet slides in really nicely if he can be healthy. So like I said, I'm pretty excited to see where that pans out. But yeah, hopefully Lamet can come back some point this year pretty healthy.
All right, my friends. Well, I think we'll leave it there. It's been a good conversation. Lacey Yonke and Brian Vilvin, the experts. I'm just here to tag along. I'm like, if we're comparing us to the 98 World Series team, for some reason, I just like comparing myself to Padres players. I'm like Kilvio Veras. I'm just like, I'm the leadoff hitter, just trying to get this thing rolling and, setting up the likes of a Ken Caminiti and Tony Gwynn. So anyways, fun stuff, guys. Again, Lacey Yonke, Brian Vilvin. I'm Andy Bishop. First episode, the Oppo on 3-0 podcast. We'll catch you next week for another one.